I'm Eric Chemi, and this is Politely Pushy. Welcome, everybody, to Politely Pushy. I'm your host, as always, Eric Chemi. Today, we are talking about building relationships with the tech and AI media. Today, we've got our stellar staff of media relation pros here. We've got Brent and Ryan. Thanks both for joining me here today. Look, I was on the other side of this before, right? I was the guy getting blasted with so many bad pitches, spam. Hey, can you talk to this client? Can you write about this client? And so much of it was just off target, right? Like, obviously, you guys' job is to figure out who's the person we need to talk to. How do we give them a win? How do we make sure that they're getting what they need so they can stay employed, and we get our clients a win because they're getting the press that they're looking for? So I'm going to start, Brent, with you. What is the number one mistake that you feel a lot of your competitors are making when it comes to trying to build a relationship?
Well, first of all, they're probably not doing their proper homework. But as you said, like I started in-house. So I was a spokesperson. I was the PR person, and I had to promote myself to the media and make that sell. So I learned really quickly, like what we should be trying to do is really think about what their goals are and what they're trying to do. And I learned also really quickly is if you work with the media, you hit a home run, you do a viral story, their editors notice that, their audience, participates, they can make revenue off of that, and they're going to come back to you. So it's really just understanding who their audience is, what their goals are, and treat them just as you would your clients. You're trying to be successful and make them look successful so they can keep their job.
Ryan, is that crazy talk, or do you agree with that?
No, I definitely mirror what Brent's saying. I came originally from the broadcasting side of things as well. I worked in the broadcasting world for I guess it would be 11 to 12 years. And so I was the one that was getting the pitches on that side for a long time. And I can tell you right now, those inboxes get pretty inundated, and they get pretty full with stuff that doesn't hit the mark. So I think that it truly is understanding what you're pitching, understanding the value that you can bring, and treating it as such. Essentially, it goes much further than just, do you have a good story to tell? It's creating an environment for a good relationship to be built. It's understanding the current landscape of the news world itself. I mean, you could have the quote unquote perfect pitch, but if you're pitching on a day where there's a ton of stuff going on, and all the reporters' eyes are pointing in different directions and not focused on their inbox, or essentially not locked into that specific topic, and you're not hitting the mark there, then you're clearly not understanding where they're coming from and what value you can bring to them as a whole. So certainly look to essentially meet them where they're at, hit them in stride as best we can, and that is understanding their goals and audiences. So I think Brent was right on.
But it feels like so much of what we just said is not obvious, but it makes sense. So why isn't everyone else able to do that? Hey, do your homework, pitch the right people, appropriate things. Why can't everyone else do basic things like this?
I would say that it's because it takes a little bit of that extra care and that extra work. I mean, it's really easy to just blast a bunch of emails out and hope that the spaghetti sticks to the wall, and hope that essentially you get a bite or two. But the reality is it takes some time to read through coverage, understand what the reporter has been focusing on. There's a lot of times that the reporter is, got a series of stories that are all along a theme, and you're like, oh, I didn't even realize that they were doing that. So it's doing that extra research. Yeah, doing that extra research and figuring out, and also figuring out their tone. You don't want to pitch them something on quantum computing saying, hey, here's the next best thing, when you realize that they've covered quantum 5 times in the past month and it's all been negative. So you have to really kind of understand where they're coming from on that regard. So you don't miss the mark.
Yeah. And I think to add to that, really building those relationships before you need them is super important. and like you said, understanding, hey, they have a series going on. They should have known about that. What was the tone of that
Yeah.
series? And just engaging thoughtfully with their content. Especially the more top tier, they're getting really blasted, especially in the age of AI. Um, I think one of the biggest, and maybe we'll talk about AI here a little bit more.
Tell me right now, when you said they're getting blasted more because of the HAI, is because there's more companies or because there's more tools that make it easy to blast people? What did you mean by that?
Oh, what I meant by that is it's a hot topic and everyone's got their fingers in AI. So one of the biggest mistakes you can make right now, and it would be with any technology that's really hot, and more media are getting pulled in to cover that topic, is they're not going to all just cover AI broadly, right? They're going to cover AI within their area that they're trying to relate to their audience, or just part of their beat, so they've been assigned to. And you need to understand that you can't just, oh well, this product has AI into it, let's just pitch it out to everyone covering AI. That's maybe one of the worst approaches you can do, because they're going to silence you if you keep doing that.
And to add to that, it used to be that every publication, whether it's tech or not, would say, "Oh yeah, we have a couple AI reporters that are on staff, and they're they're broadly gonna jump into the spectrum of the AI world." Well, it's no longer that way. Now it's either there's these vast array of AI teams or tech teams that have really kind of gotten into the nitty gritty and to these individual sectors, or it's a super niche but very well traveled and well trafficked and well respected smaller publication that really hits the audience where they're coming from. So you really have to kind of get through the noise in a lot of ways and understand, what they're specifically. There could be reporters that are like, all I handle is automation. All I do is automation. So if it doesn't automate, I don't even want to see it, even if it's a great story.
You just said get through the noise, but I feel like I could have 7 other media pros here on this call and they would say, you got to cut through the noise. But how are you actually cutting through the noise when everyone else is trying to cut through the noise?
It kind of circles back to that original one. It's, understanding what noise they're specifically looking for. And it's that groundwork of building relationships ahead of time. It's trying to, I always try to hit the mark with reporters as best I can in between the big announcement moments. So it's building that credibility, understanding that when you send a pitch from your brand, that they're looking at it going, oh, this is automatically something that's going to bring value to my day. So they didn't even have to open the email. But it's also understanding that, like, hey, they've got a crazy amount of stuff that's going on, big pressure from their editorial teams, crazy deadlines, all these things. So the more that you can build a relationship and essentially understand what specific noise pieces they're looking for, then you can essentially cut through that noise and almost like skip the line, if you will, and at least just have a general conversation. The biggest thing you want to do is get them to engage with you and tell us what they are specifically looking for. We can always bring some great value and good stories, but we have to essentially make sure that we're doing it the right way.
Yeah. I also think, when you don't have the relationship, but you've done your homework, that this particular journalist or this particular outlet is exactly where you want the news that you're bringing to be broadcast from, then you need to approach that with kind of a 2-prong approach. One is like really have your story tight, but at the same time understand who that audience is. So if it's more top tier, it's broadcast news or something like that, then you want to be able to take that technical story and present it to more of a wider trend, or something that has a societal impact, more humanized. And then if it's not, then that technical innovation needs to have some assets with it, like a spec sheet or some really technical details, because there's only so much you can say in a pitch. You need to assure that everything is ready-made for them. You're going to save them time. It's going to be on target, and it's really going to help them if they're going to write a story about it, you've done your homework to help them fulfill and make that story successful.
Do you find that knowing somebody helps grease a story, or is it all about the actual story itself?
And I think it's a little combination there. I mean, when you say knowing someone, do you mean someone in the media?
Yeah, like knowing a reporter, like, because you hear different stories, right? You hear different stories from other firms where it's like, oh, we have all the relationships, we'll make sure your story's on. And other firms, it's doesn't matter about relationships. It only matters about the quality of the story. So I'm just curious where you fall in that spectrum.
So I think there's a combination there. And I think we started talking where I said I was the spokesperson, I was the in-house expert. So I was pitching myself. And that's a big key. If you can bring a really good expert or source as an asset to a story, you don't necessarily need to have that relationship, but it will go a long ways to building that relationship. If your expert is very agile, they can jump on, they don't need a lot of coaching, they can jump on camera and they can talk to that wider trend so their larger audience can understand it. A lot of times, one of the big hurdles that we'll have, especially working with smaller companies, is they're willing to talk about their own products and services, but from an industry, more as that wider trend, they're a little timid about it and or not very good at it. And even though we can offer media training and a lot of other things, they just might not be the best expert for that more wider trend audience. So that's where you have to really focus that particular expert on more like trade media, where it's really deep tech and they can sink their teeth into that.
How did somebody get a relationship started, right? Let's say, Ryan, you were like me, you're sitting there in the broadcast newsroom and you're getting blasted, right? 100 a day, 200 a day. I'm not even opening most of this stuff, let alone responding. But like, let's say someone like Brent has a great story. It's like, if only we knew each other, if only you would open my email, this would literally be the perfect story for you. I'm not selling you something. I actually trying to help you. I know you would like it if you knew me. So how does someone actually build a relationship with a reporter or producer? And what was it, your perspective on that side of it now that you're on the other side?
Those good old days of journalism, it's the, hey, let's grab a cup of coffee and just, get some face-to-face time in between when you're writing stories and getting things out there. That doesn't happen as much anymore because we're spread across the country and a lot of times spread across the world, with a lot of our targets being even in Europe and Asia and whatnot. So what I tend to do, if there's somebody that specifically I'm looking to build a relationship with, or perhaps somebody that jumps onto a new beat, it's really trying to figure out what's making them tick, or what their beat is specifically going to be, where their angle is going to be, and preemptively and proactively reaching out and saying, hey, love your work, been reading your stuff lately. I think there's some great stuff here. I think that there's some clients that I have, or some voices in the mix that I think would be a good fit for you. If nothing else, I'd love to hop on a call so that I can learn what you're looking to cover, what's in your pipeline, so that I can better hit you in stride. And I'm not sending you stuff that you don't need. I'm not throwing a bunch of stuff at you that essentially will get lost in the shuffle. I find that it's a little bit of a lost art in creating those relationships with some reporters, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, but it oftentimes will lead you to pathways that you didn't realize that were an option. So it'll ultimately say, like, well, I'm glad you asked, because I'm specifically looking for policy things right now versus the super technical side of things. So you can kind of go, well, then all right, well, I've got a couple of clients that are really focused on telling that great policy story. Do these things resonate with you? And before you know it, you start this conversation back and forth, and they realize, like, okay, you're not just going to pitch them garbage or just the latest product update or something like that. It's going to be more along the lines of something that's really going to move the needle and bring value to the conversation. And you start it there and you go and you see where it goes.
Bro, what do you think?
Yeah So something else that has worked for me, I'm a musician. So if I notice there's a music lover out there that is a journalist, I will definitely try to appeal to them that way,
Mhm.
because I feel like minds can create better relationships. Or if they're a dog lover and I have a dog, or something like that. I mean, you don't want to go too far over the
Oh,
top or
you're a human.
sound
I'm a
sound
human.
Yeah.
creepy,
You
but
wear
yeah,
glasses. I wear glasses. Yeah.
yeah, maybe
No, but
not
it's
quite
that
that
human
crazy, but
touch, right? It's the reality
yeah,
that we're humans. We're on the PR side, but they're humans, and they're trying to do what they need to do to get across the finish line too. So relating with them
exactly.
is
Yes.
the way possible.
And let's face it, like the newsrooms aren't old fashioned anymore. Not everyone's going into the newsroom every day, right? We're working out of our homes a lot of times, and or spread, like you said, spread out all over the world. So yeah, you have to find something to make that personal touch with them. Um, Obviously you don't want to do that at the very first introduction and act like they're your best friend. Maybe some of the things that I usually try to do is I will follow them. I'll make sure that I like them on the platform that they're most active on, and seriously follow them and look at them every day for a while, especially when I know I have news coming up that they might want to be entertained with. And then that's the time to bring something up that they might have remarked on. They might not have even written on it. They might have liked something that brought that to your attention and really helped you. And a lot of times I'll call that out and thank them for that. And it's a good way to open the door.
We talked about AI a little bit earlier. I want to get more into that. How has the last couple of years changed? Or let's say even this year in 2025, is it just the workflow is totally different, or like, hey, everyone thinks they can just use AI to write a pitch, or everyone thinks they have AI in their company's product? Like, I'm sure AI in a lot of ways is making your life worse than it is making it better.
Yeah,
I like
I
the
can start
drastic
here.
adjustment there. He's like, let me really think about this here.
Yeah, when the chat GPT blew up, I mean, AI has been around for a long time, and we've been talking about AI, machine learning, and pitching that to different journalists. But once generative AI became a big thing and that touches almost everyone in the world that has any kind of digital footprint, um, now that was a game changer. So then almost everyone that's covering tech is going to cover AI on some basis. And what we figured out was, or what we had to figure out was the best way to approach all of these different journalists that are covering AI. And it really made you have to do a little bit more homework and read the news and understand what they're reporting on. Things that we talked about before is that upfront research, reaching out to them, letting them know when you have an appropriate source because you've been following their news. Those type of tactics are very important to help build that relationship, because the competition to get your AI story now is like 100 times tougher than it was a few years ago.
And to add to that, I'll say the silver bullets a lot of times are pieces of data and real world applications. So, you can talk a big game. There's a lot of startups that are coming out. Not to say that they're not on these tracks for amazing things, but a lot of times the reporters or who are getting hundreds of pitches a day, if not a week, they're saying, okay, well, what customers can you bring to the table that can also provide validation on all this? What pieces of data do you have to back up what you're talking about? So we have to kind of get a little bit more into the second and third tier of that story when it comes to AI to figure out what makes it tick essentially, and what ultimately will get it across the finish line.
What have you guys seen?
And
Oh, go ahead, Brent. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I hate to use the word exclusive, right? We think of that more as like, hey, this is an exclusive and it's going at this date. But exclusive can mean a lot more than that. And I think now with AI and all of the different developments and how fast, generative AI is developing here, it's a matter of having an exclusive expert, and maybe not even using that word, but it's having that technical team. It's having those assets that can really enrich a story and make it different than maybe other agencies are bringing to that same journalist.
A couple of years ago, it felt like everyone had a political a story to go along with their technology or their point of view. And now it feels like, maybe I just better keep my mouth shut about some of this stuff. Have you seen narratives changing from the startup community who are like, you know what, let me just talk about my tech and I can stay out of a lot of this stuff?
Well, the ones I think that are willing to dip their toe in that very dirty mud puddle right now is the best thing that we can do as PR professionals is really coach them on where that neutrality and that safe zone is. It's okay to approach it as long as they're not alienating potential clients or existing customers. At the same time, and we've had some luck with certain clients that work more in the data center area where they can remain a little bit more neutral and talk about the things that are happening right now and what that means, to a longer term scale. And I think that's the difference here is when you have these times of uncertainty, there's also uncertainty about what I can say and what I can't. But if you stay in your lane and focus on that bigger, wider trend in the industry and all the things that are affecting it, not just what's happening at the White House, then you can take on some of these political discussions and be pretty successful at it.
And if you have a lot of these strategic conversations with your client and with your client's team, and you figure out what wrinkles may work and won't hinder or hurt their business model or their relationships, and you have a spokesperson on the client side that is willing and able to provide a perspective on something or an opinion on something that will get some eyebrows raised and get some eyes headed their direction, it can be a really, really valuable tool. I will almost take a very well scripted LinkedIn post from a CEO with a great opinion about a topic over getting a general quote in a reporter's article. If it's strategically placed and it hits the right notes, it can essentially bring more and more conversations up and more eyes to their product.
Yeah, and I think transparency and honesty is pretty good in these times too, especially, we've got tariffs. I don't know how any business gets around tariffs now. Everyone's being affected. And that can be your lead in and help create that safe zone, and then once you're talking about those tariffs, like how is that affecting you and your customers? Those are the things we want to coach our clients on talking about. So they're really talking about what they know and what's affecting them, and that will help them stay neutral and really talk more about the economics of what's happening.
Awesome. This is great. Appreciate it. Brent, Ryan, thank you so much for spending some time with me today. As it's just a challenging environment right now, right? For people to get their message out and get it in front of the right people. I guess before I go, why then are so many people just using the big spam blast list that isn't targeted? It's the same pitch to 300 people that clearly 300 people can't be interested in your product. Why do people do that?
Well, one, if they're doing it right off the get-go, then they're not preparing ahead of time, right? A lot of times I would say when the big spam blast happens, it's when no one's covering your news and you get desperate and you have a cranky client that's about ready to fire you. Then
it's like, what the hell?
Then you can. So there just needs to be more oversight when that's happening. It's something that lately we've been paying a lot more attention to. It's like we were talking about with AI. There's not everyone's going to cover the AI that you're talking about. As a matter of fact, there's probably very few journalists that are going to cover the AI that you're talking about. So it's having those steps in place. Somebody's creating the media list, and then there's a couple more eyes looking at it to make sure that it's on target.
And then the last thing, Do you find you're more successful with shorter pitches or longer pitches?
I'll jump in here. Shorter pitches tends to be the way to go. Okay. Truth be told, you don't need to tell the full story in your pitch. I think that's one of the big issues that people run into with pitches. Some of the best pitches I've seen in my days have been literally just a sentence or two, just to kind of spark something. If you have a great subject line and you have a really compelling sentence or two, or even just a very targeted background on what you're offering, specifics that you can essentially add to the mix. That's all you really need. You don't have to basically draft a press release and send it their way. The longer it gets and the more conversations we have with reporters, the more it tends to get essentially pushed aside, or the reporter is strapped for time and trying to figure out what they're going to be covering for either that day, that week, or that month, and they see the pitch and they open it and it's 5-6 paragraphs long. It'll turn them off right away. So shorter is always better.
Yeah, I'm in your boat with that. Okay, well now I can say goodbye. Brent and Ryan, thank you so much for the time today. I really appreciate it.
All right, thanks, Eric.
Yeah. Thanks so much.
Thank you to my guest, and thanks for listening. Subscribe to get the latest episodes each week, and we'll see you next time.